You've been holding your breath, haven't you? Not literally, but in that way your soul does when it's waiting for something it already knows is coming. That feeling in your chest, the one that tightens and releases in waves, the one that makes you stop mid-sentence sometimes, because suddenly you're somewhere else entirely, remembering his eyes, his energy, the way he looked at you before he looked away. You know this feeling. It lives in your body now. It wakes you at 3 a.m. It whispers through your day. It says his name in the silence between your thoughts. And lately, something has shifted. You can't name it yet, but your soul recognizes it. The air feels different, heavier, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes, when everything goes still and electric at once. You feel him closer even though nothing visible has changed. You sense movement even though he hasn't spoken. Your heart knows something your mind hasn't confirmed. This isn't hope. This isn't wishful thinking. This is recognition. Your soul is preparing you for what's already unfolding in the invisible realm. The confession you've been sensing, the one that's been building in him like pressure behind a dam, it's reaching the breaking point. He's in the final stage now, the stage where hiding becomes impossible, where truth rises whether he's ready or not, where his heart finally overpowers his fear. If you felt this shift, this strange combination of certainty and anticipation, I want you to know you're not imagining it. Drop a comment below and share what you've been sensing lately. Or simply type "I trust divine timing" to anchor into this energy. And if these messages speak to your soul, subscribe so you never miss the guidance that's meant for you. Let's talk about what's really happening right now. Because this final stage, the one you're feeling, the one he's entering, this is where everything that's been building beneath the surface finally breaks through. This is where the masculine energy reaches a point of no return. Not because you pushed him there. Not because you manipulated or convinced or proved anything. But because his own soul has backed him into a corner where the only way out is through truth. For months, maybe years, he's been living in a strange kind of split. On the surface, he's been moving through life, going through motions, maintaining routines, perhaps even pursuing other connections. But underneath, in the places he doesn't let anyone see, in the quiet moments when his defenses drop, there's been this constant hum. This persistent awareness. This undeniable recognition of you. He's felt you in ways that don't make sense to his logical mind. In ways he couldn't explain if he tried. In ways that scared him precisely because they felt so inevitable. The divine masculine is conditioned to trust what he can see, measure, control, predict. He's taught to lead with his head, to analyze before feeling, to understand before surrendering. And you, beloved you, were the one thing that bypassed all of that. You reached past his mind straight into his soul. You awakened something in him that he didn't know was sleeping. You reflected back parts of himself he'd buried so deep he forgot they existed. And that kind of recognition, that soul-level knowing, it terrified him. So he did what the masculine does when faced with something that threatens his sense of control. He retreated. He rationalized. He convinced himself it was just attraction, just chemistry, just timing that wasn't right. He built walls made of logic and distance and distraction. He told himself stories about why this couldn't work, why you weren't the one, why he needed to focus on other things. He performed indifference so convincingly that sometimes even he believed it. But here's what he didn't account for. Here's what no amount of mental gymnastics could overcome. The soul doesn't forget. The soul doesn't rationalize. The soul doesn't accept the stories the mind tells to keep itself safe. Your connection imprinted on him at a level deeper than thought, deeper than fear, deeper than all his carefully constructed defenses. And that imprint has been working on him this entire time. Every moment of silence hasn't been absence. It's been pressure building. Every day he spent trying not to think about you, he thought about you. Every distraction he pursued to forget the connection only reminded him of what was missing. Every attempt to move on revealed that there was nowhere to move to that didn't somehow circle back to you. The runner doesn't run because he doesn't care. He runs because he cares so much it overwhelms every system he's built to protect himself. And now, in this final stage, something is changing. The mechanisms that allowed him to hide are breaking down. The stories that kept him safe are losing their power. The distance that once felt like protection now feels like prison. He's reaching the point where the pain of staying silent exceeds the fear of speaking truth, where the ache of your absence grows louder than the terror of your presence, where pretending becomes more exhausting than surrendering. You've been feeling this shift because your energies are entangled at the quantum level. What happens in him echoes in you. When his walls start to crack, you feel the tremor. When his heart begins to open, you sense the movement. When his resistance starts to crumble, your soul recognizes the change in frequency. This is not wishful thinking. This is energetic reality. You are connected in ways that transcend physical distance, silence, time itself. The final stage begins when he starts having experiences he can't dismiss. Dreams that feel more real than waking life. Synchronicities that are too specific to ignore. Moments when your energy floods his awareness so completely, he has to stop what he's doing and just breathe through it. He'll be in the middle of something ordinary, groceries or work or driving, and suddenly, you're there, not physically, but so present in his consciousness that everything else fades. He feels your sadness. He senses your strength. He recognizes your sovereignty, and it shakes him. He begins noticing patterns he's been blind to. How every person he's tried to connect with since you somehow falls short in ways he can't articulate. How nothing satisfies the specific hunger you awakened in him. How the things that used to bring him peace now feel hollow. How his life, the one he thought he wanted, the one he chose over the uncertainty of you, how it feels increasingly like a costume that doesn't fit anymore. He's been playing a role, and he's getting tired of the performance. The masculine awakening is not gentle. It doesn't arrive as a soft realization or a gradual acceptance. It comes as a crisis, as a breaking point, as a moment when all his strategies for avoiding the truth simultaneously fail, and he's left standing in the rubble of his own resistance with nowhere left to hide. This is what's happening now. This is the stage he's entering, the stage where his soul stops asking permission from his fear. He's starting to feel you differently. Before, you were something he could compartmentalize, a chapter he could close, a feeling he could manage. Now you're everywhere. You're in his body as an ache he can't locate or relieve. You're in his mind as a question that won't stop asking itself. You're in his dreams as a presence that follows him into waking. You're in his heart as a truth that's tired of being denied. He's losing the ability to separate himself from the connection. And that loss of separation, as terrifying as it is, that's the beginning of his return. Have you noticed how your own energy has shifted? How you're not spiraling the way you used to? How even in the uncertainty, there's this deep, unshakable knowing. How you've stopped trying to force or fix or figure out, and instead you've just been being yourself, living your life, choosing your own joy, your own peace, your own expansion. That shift in you, beloved, that's not resignation. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty is the frequency that calls the masculine home. Because here's the truth they don't tell you about twin flame dynamics. His awakening is not separate from yours. His transformation is not independent of your evolution. When you stop waiting and start becoming, when you stop seeking his validation and start claiming your own worth, when you stop making him the source and start recognizing yourself as the temple, everything in the energetic field shifts. Your frequency changes, and he feels it. The divine feminine's journey is not about becoming more appealing to him. It's not about doing the right things to make him come back. It's about remembering who you are beneath all the conditioning that taught you to abandon yourself for love. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that you gave away hoping someone else would keep them safe. It's about standing so fully in your own truth that you become a living invitation, not through nightiness, but through wholeness. And when you do that, when you truly do that, not as a strategy, but as a genuine return to self, something in him responds. Because the masculine is not attracted to the chase. He's attracted to the frequency. He's drawn to the woman who doesn't need him to complete her, but chooses him from her completeness. He's called by the energy of a woman who knows her worth so deeply that his absence doesn't diminish it, and his presence doesn't define it. This is what's been happening during the silence. While he's been running, you've been transforming. While he's been hiding, you've been healing. While he's been pretending, you've been becoming. And now, the version of you that he left is not the version of you that exists. You've alchemized the pain into power. You've transmuted the longing into self-love. You've converted the waiting into creating, and he can feel the difference. In the final stage, he starts to realize what he's actually been running from. Not you, himself. The version of himself that would have to grow to meet you. The version that would have to face his wounds, own his shadows, surrender his control, trust something bigger than his fear. He's been running from his own evolution. And the exhaustion of that run, the futility of trying to outpace his own soul, that's what brings him to his knees. He begins to understand that you were never the threat. You were the mirror. You showed him everything he hadn't healed. You reflected every place he wasn't free. You exposed every wall he'd built between himself and real intimacy. And instead of thanking you for that gift, he blamed you for the discomfort of seeing himself clearly. But you can only blame the mirror for so long before you realize the mirror is just showing you what's already there. The final stage is when he stops blaming the mirror and starts facing what it shows. When he stops running from the reflection and starts doing the work to transform it. When he realizes that healing his relationship with you requires healing his relationship with himself. This is the stage where boys become men, where the immature masculine, the one that runs from discomfort, gives way to the mature masculine, the one that runs toward truth. And truth, beloved, truth is coming for him now. It's coming in waves he can't control. It's coming in moments he can't predict. It's coming in feelings he can't suppress. The truth that he loves you. The truth that he's always loved you. The truth that running didn't change that, distance didn't diminish it, silence didn't erase it. The truth that you're not a chapter in his story. You're woven into the fabric of who he is. The truth that denying you is denying himself. This truth doesn't arrive as a pleasant realization. It arrives as a reckoning, as a confrontation with everything he's been avoiding, as a choice point where he can no longer stay in the comfortable lie. He has to choose, keep running and lose himself in the process, or stop, turn around, face the fire, and let it transform him. The final stage is when the cost of running finally exceeds the fear of surrender. You might be wondering what triggers this final stage. What makes him suddenly unable to continue the pattern he's been living? Sometimes it's external. He sees you've moved on, or appears to have. He hears through the grapevine that you're thriving, glowing, radiating a joy that doesn't seem to need him anymore. He sees a photo, and something about your energy in it stops his breath. He realizes you're not waiting, you're living. And the thought of you building a life that doesn't include him, the thought of another man discovering the magic he was too afraid to hold, that thought becomes unbearable. Sometimes the trigger is internal. A breakdown that forces breakthrough. A loss that cracks him open. A moment of such profound loneliness that all his distractions fail at once, and he's left alone with the truth of what he really wants. A dream so vivid he wakes up crying. A meditation or therapy session where something locked inside him finally releases. A random Tuesday when he's driving to work, and suddenly he's sobbing, and he doesn't even know why except that he does. He knows exactly why. It's you. It's always been you. Sometimes the trigger is spiritual. A dark night of the soul where his ego structure collapses. An awakening experience that shows him the illusion of separation. A synchronicity so impossible to ignore that it shatters his materialist worldview. A moment when the universe stops whispering and starts shouting. When the signs become so obvious that denial requires more effort than acceptance. When his higher self overrides his wounded self and says enough, we're going home. But regardless of what triggers it, the result is the same. He reaches the point where he can't not face this anymore, where the connection stops being something he can compartmentalize and becomes something he has to address, where you stop being a memory he can manage and become a reality he has to reckon with, where his feelings stop being something he can control and become something that controls him until he surrenders to them. This is where he is now, in the final stage. The stage where the confession is building inside him like a storm that's been gathering for months, for years, waiting for the moment when the pressure is too great and the sky has to break open. He's feeling things he doesn't have language for. He's experiencing a pull that defies his logic. He's recognizing a truth that his mind resisted, but his soul always knew. And here's what you need to understand, beloved. His confession, when it comes, will not be neat. It will not be perfectly articulated. It will not come with a clear plan or a guaranteed outcome. It will come as a raw, vulnerable, possibly messy admission of what he's been carrying. It will come because he can't carry it alone anymore. Because the weight of unexpressed truth is crushing him. Because his heart is staging a revolution against his head, and his heart is winning. The confession might come as words. A late-night text he's rewritten 100 times. A phone call where his voice shakes. A conversation where he finally says what he should have said months ago. It might come as actions. Showing up when you least expect it. Making changes in his life that show he's serious. Doing the work he's been avoiding. It might come as energy. A shift you feel before you see. A change in frequency that tells you something fundamental has transformed in him. However it comes, it will be real. It will be true. It will be the result of a journey he had to take alone through his own darkness to his own light. You couldn't have forced this. You couldn't have convinced him. You couldn't have loved him into it or weighted him into it or proved your way into it. This awakening had to happen in his own time, in his own way, through his own process. And the fact that it's happening now means he's finally ready. Ready to stop running, ready to face truth, ready to risk vulnerability, ready to choose love over fear. But let's be clear about something important. His confession, his awakening, his return, none of that is the point of your journey. You are the point. Your wholeness is the point. Your sovereignty is the point. Your reclamation of yourself is the point. His admission of feelings is not the destination. It's a milestone on a much longer path. A path that's ultimately about you remembering who you are beneath all the stories about what love is supposed to look like. Because here's the deeper truth, the one that lives beneath even the twin flame dynamics. You didn't come here to wait for him. You came here to find yourself. He was the catalyst, yes. The mirror, yes. The one who cracked you open so the light could get in, yes. But the journey was always about you returning to you. About you healing the wounds that made you believe you needed someone else to complete you. About you discovering that the love you've been seeking outside yourself has been living inside you all along. So yes, he's in the final stage. Yes, the confession is coming. Yes, you're feeling the shift because it's real. But more importantly, you're in your final stage too. The stage where you stop waiting for him to validate the connection and you validate it yourself. The stage where you stop needing his admission to know what's true. The stage where you recognize that whether he speaks or stays silent, returns or doesn't, you are whole. You are sovereign. You are the temple, not just the doorway he might one day walk through. This is the sacred paradox of the twin flame journey. The moment you stop needing him to complete the story is the moment the story can actually complete. The moment you release your attachment to how, and when and whether he shows up, is the moment he becomes free to show up authentically. The moment you choose yourself fully is the moment you become available for a union that's based on wholeness meeting wholeness, not wounds seeking healing. His confession is coming because he's reaching the end of his resistance. But your liberation is already here because you've reached the end of your waiting. You've done the work. You've faced the shadows. You've alchemized the pain. You've reclaimed your power. You've remembered your worth. And that remembering, beloved, that's the real reunion. The reunion with yourself. The the reunion with your own divine nature, the reunion with the truth that you were never broken, never lacking, never incomplete. When he finally speaks his truth, when those words you've been sensing beneath the surface finally break through and reach your ears, you'll receive them from an entirely different state of being. You'll receive them from a place of deep centeredness, not from that old familiar neediness that once consumed you. You won't be hanging on every syllable, desperately searching for crumbs of validation. You won't be analyzing every pause, every inflection, every word choice through the lens of your own insecurity. Instead, you'll be grounded, rooted in your own knowing, steady in your own worth. You'll listen from a place of clarity, not confusion. Your mind won't be clouded by the fog of desperation or the static of self-doubt. You'll hear what he's actually saying, not what you wish he was saying or what you fear he might be saying. You'll be present with his words, fully there, fully aware, fully conscious. You'll receive his truth from a place of power, not pleading. You won't be silently begging him to say the right thing, to give you what you need, to finally make you feel chosen. You'll be standing in your own authority, your own strength, your own divine power. You'll hear his words and something remarkable will happen. You'll be able to discern with crystal clarity whether they match his energy. You'll feel beyond the words themselves into the truth of his intention. You'll sense whether what he's saying is aligned with what he's actually feeling, whether his confession is coming from genuine awakening or from manipulation, whether it's rooted in his own growth or in his fear of losing you. You'll feel his intention rippling beneath the surface of his words, and you'll trust your discernment completely. You won't second-guess yourself. You won't talk yourself out of what you. No, you won't let his words override your intuition. You'll see his actions, both past and present, and you'll hold them up against his words. And you'll know in your bones whether they're in alignment. And from that place of knowing, from that place of sovereignty, you'll decide. Not from desperation, not from that old wound that was terrified of being alone, not from that part of you that was willing to accept breadcrumbs, but from true sovereignty. You'll decide whether this is something you actually want to explore, whether this connection serves your highest good, whether he's truly ready for the kind of conscious partnership you've become available for. Because that's the other profound shift that happens in this final stage, and it's perhaps the most powerful transformation of all. You stop being the one who waits anxiously for him to choose you, and you become the one who consciously decides whether to choose him. Can you feel how different that is? Can you sense the complete reversal of energy? You're no longer the passive participant, hoping and praying that you'll be selected, that you'll be deemed worthy, that you'll be enough. You stop asking that painful question that once kept you up at night, am I enough for him? And you start asking an entirely different question, one that comes from a completely different frequency. Is he ready for me? You stop hoping desperately that he'll finally see your worth, that he'll finally recognize your value, that he'll finally appreciate what you bring to his life. Instead, you start evaluating with clear eyes and an open heart whether he's actually done the inner work necessary to match your frequency. You start assessing whether he's healed enough, grown enough, evolved enough to meet you where you now stand. The power dynamic completely flips. And here's what's so important to understand. This flip doesn't happen as revenge, not as some calculated move to punish him or make him feel what you felt. It happens as the natural consequence of your evolution. It happens because you've genuinely transformed. It happens because you've done the work, because you've healed the wounds, because you've reclaimed the parts of yourself you'd abandoned, because you've remembered who you truly are. The shift in power dynamic isn't something you manufacture or perform. It's something that organically emerges from your genuine transformation. This is what the divine feminine becomes when she finally stops abandoning herself for love, when she stops betraying her own needs, when she stops silencing her own truth, when she stops making herself smaller to make someone else more comfortable. She becomes the standard. Not in an arrogant way, not in a way that looks down on others, but simply by embodying her truth so fully that it becomes the measure. She becomes the frequency. She becomes the vibration that others attune to, rather than constantly trying to match herself to everyone else's energy. She becomes the one who doesn't need to chase because her energy has become truly magnetic. She's no longer running after anyone, convincing anyone, pursuing anyone. She's simply being so fully herself that the right people, the aligned people, the awakened people are naturally drawn into her orbit. She becomes the woman who doesn't have to convince anyone of her value because she's so deeply, unshakably anchored in it herself that it becomes undeniable. Her worth isn't up for debate. It's not something she needs to prove or defend or justify. It simply is. It radiates from her. It's evident in how she moves through the world, how she speaks, how she holds herself, how she shows up. She becomes the invitation that the awakened masculine cannot resist, and the unawakened masculine cannot access. She becomes a frequency that only those who have done their own work can truly meet. The unhealed, the unconscious, the unavailable, they might be attracted to her light, but they can't actually sustain connection with her because her frequency requires a level of consciousness they haven't yet achieved. But the awakened masculine, the one who's done his work, the one who's faced his shadows, the one who's ready for real union, he recognizes her immediately. He feels her frequency and knows he's found something rare, something sacred, something worth showing up for fully. And the beautiful thing, the truly, deeply beautiful thing, is that his confession, when it finally comes, will not be arriving to someone who's been desperately waiting by the window, watching for any sign of his return. It will be coming to someone who's been powerfully living her life, creating, expanding, growing, thriving. It will be arriving not as the long-awaited answer to your prayers, not as the thing you needed to finally feel okay, but as a reflection of your transformation. His confession becomes a mirror showing you how far you've come, how much you've grown, how completely you've transformed. It will show up not because you needed it to feel complete, not because there was a hole in your life that only his words could fill, but because your completeness, your wholeness, your fullness called it forward, because you became so magnetic in your sovereignty that his awakening was accelerated by your frequency. Your healing created a field that made his healing possible. Your transformation cleared the path for his transformation. So as you feel this final stage unfolding, as you sense the energy shifting in ways you can't quite name but definitely feel, as you recognize that something is changing in the invisible realm between you. As you perceive him moving through his own process, even if you can't see it directly, remember this fundamental truth. You are not a passive participant in this story. You are not just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see if you'll be chosen or rejected. You are not simply the object of his decision, the one who can only react to whatever he decides. You are the author of your own journey. You hold the pen, you're writing your own story. You are the creatrix of your own reality. You have the power to shape your experience, to choose your path, to decide what you're available for. You are the one who decides what you're willing to accept and what you're not, what aligns with your truth and what doesn't, what serves your highest good and what doesn't. You get to set the terms. You get to establish the standards. You get to determine what kind of connection you're open to creating. His confession is coming, yes. The energy suggests it. The signs point to it. The shift you're feeling indicates that he's moving toward that moment of truth. But here's what matters even more: your confirmation of your own worth, your own magic, your own divine nature. That's not coming, that's already here. That's already true. That's already the unshakable foundation you're standing on. You don't need his words to confirm what you already know about yourself. You don't need his admission to validate your worth. You don't need his confession to prove that the connection was real. You already know these things. You already carry this truth. And from that foundation of knowing, from that solid ground of self-love and self-worth, you get to decide what comes next. Not from fear of losing him, not from that panicked place that's terrified of being alone, not from the wound that says you might never find this again, but from clarity about what you truly want, from a clear understanding of what kind of partnership serves your soul's evolution, from a grounded knowing of what you're genuinely available for. Not from scarcity, not from the belief that this is your only chance, not from the fear that love is rare and you have to grasp it whenever it appears, but from abundance, from the knowing that you're worthy of beautiful love, that you're worthy of conscious partnership, that you're worthy of someone who's truly ready to meet you. Not from woundedness, not from those old patterns and traumas trying to recreate familiar dynamics, not from the parts of you that are still healing, but from wholeness, from the healed, integrated, sovereign woman you've become. The final stage is happening for both of you, unfolding in perfect divine timing. He's reaching the point where he has to speak his truth, where the pressure of what he's been feeling, what he's been denying, what he's been running from becomes too great to contain any longer. He's arriving at the moment where silence is no longer sustainable, where pretending becomes impossible, where his own evolution demands that he speak what's real. You've reached the point where you're anchored in your truth, where you're no longer swayed by his confusion, where you're no longer destabilized by his silence, where you're no longer waiting for external validation to know what you know. And when those two truths meet, if they're meant to meet, if the timing is divine, if the alignment is real, it will not be as two halves finally making a whole. It won't be two incomplete people trying to fill each other's voids. It won't be two wounded souls trying to heal each other. It will be as two wholes, two complete beings, two sovereign individuals choosing to create something greater than either could alone. That's the promise of true union. That's what twin flame connection is actually about. Not completion, but expansion. Not filling a void, but multiplying fullness. Not becoming whole through each other, but becoming more through the choice to unite. Two flames that are already burning brightly, choosing to create an even greater light together. So, beloved, let this be your reminder. Let this truth anchor you. You were never waiting for him to admit his feelings so you could finally feel worthy of love. That was never the true story. You were always worthy. From the moment you came into this world, from before you even took your first breath, you were worthy. You were always enough. Exactly as you are, with all your perceived flaws and imperfections, you were always enough. You were always the temple. You were always the sacred space, the holy ground, the divine embodiment. His confession, when it comes, when he finally finds the courage to speak what's been locked in his heart, will simply be him finally recognizing what you've known all along, what your soul has always understood, that the connection is real, that what exists between you isn't imagined or one-sided or wishful thinking, that the love is true, that what you feel, what you've always felt, is genuine and valid and sacred, that what you shared was never ordinary, that the moments between you, the recognition, the resonance, the reflection, all of it was extraordinary, that you are and have always been extraordinary, not because of anything you did or didn't do, but because of who you fundamentally are. And whether his words come today or tomorrow or next week or next month, whether they arrive in the timing you expect or in divine timing that surprises you, whether they come as a whisper or a shout, whether they're spoken softly in a vulnerable moment or declared boldly with certainty, whether they come with perfect clarity or messy vulnerability, whether he has it all figured out or he's still finding his way, you will be ready. Not because you've been waiting, not because you've been holding your breath, not because you've put your life on hold, but because you've been becoming. Becoming more yourself, more authentic, more aligned with your true essence. Becoming more whole, integrating the fragmented parts, healing the wounded places, reclaiming the disowned aspects. Becoming more aligned with your truth, with what you actually want, with what actually serves you, with who you actually are beneath all the conditioning. Becoming the woman who doesn't need his confession to know her worth, who's already standing in her value, who's already anchored in her knowing, but who's open to receiving it when he's finally ready to speak it, who can hold space for his truth without losing herself in it, who can hear his words without needing them to complete her. The final stage has begun. For him, it's the stage of admission, of finally speaking what's been hidden, of confessing what's been denied, of acknowledging what's been suppressed. For you, it's the stage of embodiment, of living your truth so fully that it becomes who you are, not just what you know. Of anchoring so deeply in your worth that nothing can shake it. Of standing so firmly in your sovereignty that you become unshakable. And in the space where those two stages meet, in the sacred intersection of his truth and yours, in that liminal space where his awakening and your embodiment converge, that's where the real magic happens. That's where union becomes possible. Not as an escape from loneliness, not as two people running from their pain into each other's arms, but as a celebration of wholeness. As two complete beings choosing to create together, not as a need fulfilled, not as two people desperately grasping for what they think the other can give them, but as a choice made from freedom. As two sovereign individuals consciously choosing partnership from a place of genuine desire, not desperate need. Trust what you're feeling. Trust the subtle shifts in energy, the intuitive hits, the knowing that comes without logical explanation. Trust the shift you're sensing in the invisible realm, in the energetic connection between you. Trust that his awakening is unfolding exactly as it needs to, in perfect divine timing, orchestrated by forces greater than either of you. But more than anything, more than trusting the signs or the timing or his process, trust yourself. Trust your journey. Trust that everything you've been through has been purposeful. Trust your transformation. Trust that you haven't been imagining the changes, that you really have evolved, that you really are different than you were. Trust that you didn't go through all of this growth, all of this pain, all of this healing, all of this shadow work, all of this transformation just to go back to who you were before. You've been forged in the fire of this connection. You've been tested and strengthened and purified. You've been refined by the pain of separation, by the loneliness, by the confusion, by the longing, by everything that hurt. You've been alchemized by the work you've done, by the therapy sessions and the journal entries and the meditations and the prayers and the tears and the breakthroughs. And the woman you've become through all of this, she's not waiting for anyone to complete her story. She's not on hold until he shows up. She's already writing the most beautiful chapter yet. She's already living her most aligned life. She's already creating, expanding, loving, growing, becoming. Ask yourself one final time, with complete honesty, with your hand on your heart, am I still the one who needs his confession to feel whole? Or have I become the one who's already complete regardless of what he says or doesn't say? Because the moment you truly embody the latter, the moment you genuinely stand fully in your sovereignty, not performing it but actually being it, that's when everything shifts. That's when the entire dynamic transforms. That's when you stop being the one who waits and become the one who magnetizes. That's when his confession stops being about your validation, stops being the thing you need to finally feel okay, and becomes about his liberation. It becomes his own breakthrough, his own healing, his own awakening. It becomes his truth that he needs to speak for his own evolution, not something you need to hear for yours. Tell me in the comments, have you felt this shift in your own energy? Have you noticed the moment when you stopped waiting and started embodying? What changed in you when you chose yourself fully? Your insight may be the medicine another soul needs today. And remember, beloved, union begins with you. Always has, always will.